personal guidance. So I'm John Ambrose. I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about my experiences with personal guidance from a range of different perspectives. Great to be back in this series then, having started the very first one. I know you've had a whole range of different contents throughout the last kind of 8 to 10 weeks, really. So I'm going to share my screen and take you a bit through my experiences of professional guidance. Okay, so just this session, then I'll be talking for about 30 to 35 minutes or so, and mainly really looking at the following areas, really. So I'm hoping by the end of the session, start to reflect on some of those key drivers for personal guidance, then. So from policy levels, then, to include Gatsby reports, and also to go for a bit more of an underpinning rationale, really, for guidance. We'll also look at some of the best practice models of guidance delivery, and reflecting on the current personal guidance provision to ensure full achievement of Gatsby 8 and statutory duty. And then we'll also be looking at the role that colleagues can play in our organisation to support personal guidance with careers, information and advice. Again, just to highlight really my perspective on this matter. So it kind of comes from 4 different avenues, really. So first of all, I'm a practicing guidance practitioner. I've been trained since 2001, and I've been working in a range of schools over that practicing careers guidance, and I'm still doing that now for up to 20 days a year. I'm also coming at from a perspective as being like a manager, I guess, then really of a guidance service that we have here at Careers, trading with at least about 20 schools across the county and beyond. Also from the Quality and Careers Standard perspective. So we're a licensed awarding body of the Quality and Careers Standard of Complete Careers through our Career Mark community approach, and obviously therefore having a good overview about the requirements to be able to effectively do personal guidance for the requirements of the Quality and Careers Standard. But also, for about 10-15 years now in Lincolnshire, we've been providing level 3 courses to support this triage approach to helping other people in schools and colleges develop competencies in careers, information and advice, work alongside a personal guidance provider in schools. And I think that's quite a useful blend, the 4 of those things together, then, to be able to start to think about how this can really affect personal guidance and how we can really bring it together effectively. And obviously that really comes from a premise where the supply really for, in fact, well, the demand, should I say, actually, for one-to-one career support in schools and colleges is far, far greater than the supply, I think, of qualified careers professionals. What we've got to do is we've got to use our resources effectively to make sure we can meet that demand as best as possible. And essentially, that's really what this session is going to cover today, about how we can do that effectively. So again, as with the same slide that I pinned from the very first session, in terms of the etiquette for this session, be going on for at least about 40 minutes, sorry, for at least maximum of about 40 minutes, between about 30 to 40 minutes. Your microphones are muted. The session is being recorded and you can access it. They tend to be from about Monday or Tuesday live on our website through the blog section, I think. You can come back and access that at any time. And there's the chat facility throughout this session then. So if you've got any questions, just do tap away and chat throughout it, or if you want to, just unmute your mic and ask the question away. Do tend to get quite excited and kind of like into my session a little bit, so I'm not always the best at noting these questions, but I do promise I will try my very best to make reference to checking them periodically to make sure that I'm not missing anything particularly. But if I do miss anything, I promise I will answer at the end. Okay, so let's start by getting to grips with the underpinning guidance really around personal guidance. So this term personal guidance came in from the Gatsby Foundation from their report in 2013. And this is an extract from that report, and really, so it starts to look at the term personal guidance and starts to introduce this notion that every pupil should have the opportunity for guidance interviews with a careers advisor. It could be internal, a member of school staff, or external, commissioned in, making sure that they're trained to an appropriate level. Okay, goes on to talk a little bit more about when that guidance might be provided, and we'll look at that later on. So that's an extract from the 2013 Good Careers Guidance Report from the Gatsby Foundation. What's really interesting is that the next slide here, which again breaks every rule, go in for the amount of words you should have on a slide, but is paragraphs taken directly from the statutory guidance, paragraph 79 here. And what this does, it kind of explains a little bit further then, and we can start to see a real close correlation to that Gatsby report in 2013, where it says this is all around personal guidance, these paragraphs. Every pupil should have the opportunity for personal guidance interviews with a qualified careers advisor. And it later goes on to say, it's the government's expectation that every pupil should have at least one such interview, so personal guidance, qualified careers advisor interview by the age of 16, and the opportunity for a further one by the age of 18. So that's quite a clear, well, it's clear in many ways about saying about the level there that's required. There are only about 4 or 5 musts in the whole of the statutory guidance, and this isn't one of those musts, and none of the Gatsby benchmarks are musts. It's the expectation to kind of. So we're obviously trying to influence by making sure that we do as best as job as possible about meeting that expectation on personal guidance, and we'll come back to that as we go through the session. The second key paragraph in the statutory guidance, October 2018, this is paragraph 81. And this is where it tells us a bit more about what the qualified careers advisor should look like, that the qualified personal guidance provider should look like. And it talks here then about appropriately trained member of staff, might be internal or external, and it talks here about the role of the Career Development Institute, CDI, and they're the professional body of our careers sector here, and they've got a set of professional standards for careers advisors, including this professional register. So this register is online, and it means that anybody that's level 6 or level 7 in careers guidance or career development can apply to join the professional register. And obviously the CDI will look to see the appropriate qualifications and will add them onto the register if they're practicing. And to be on that register, they've also got to make sure that they abide by the code of ethics, that they all do at least 25 hours a year of CPD, and various other kind of aspects there. But it's also searchable for schools so that you can see which registered careers professionals are operating in your area. So again, it's a should. The schools should use a qualified careers advisor there, and it talks there about the role of the CDI in providing that support. So advice there to be able to access that appropriately. To take this further though, there's then the quality and career standard. And again, I know Janet's done a session on this if you managed to access that. If not, it will be in the blogs on our website that you can come back to. The quality and career standard is the single national award for careers services for careers delivery in schools and colleges. We've got a licensed awarding body of that with Complete Careers and Career Market, So, but again, it's interesting to look at the quality and career standards take on professional guidance and personal guidance. The quality and career standards is completely aligned to Gatsby. and meets with all of the Compass Plus and Compass requirements, as well as all the statutory guidance kind of thing, and it acts as a bit of an external judgment and against the Gatsby benchmarks and statutory guidance. What it also does is it goes beyond statutory guidance here, and this is a good example of this for personal guidance, benchmark 8. And this is why it says that anybody that's going for the quality and career standard through Complete Careers and CareerMark or anyone else, that it requires guidance professionals to subscribe to the code of ethics, code of practice, so that's the CDI's professional register that I've just mentioned in place. So it's saying that whoever's doing your one-to-one personal guidance must be on that professional register because it shows independence, impartiality, professional qualifications, etc. But it also says that there should be quality assurance mechanisms in place to ensure that whoever's delivering the professional practice is sound, really, and it's that QA mechanism is by somebody occupationally competent to do so. So, for example, with Complete Careers and lots of other kind of careers services kind of thing, we have those kind of services built into it, to our mechanisms, really, where we do regular observations of staff like that. But also, if you've got your own careers advisor employed by the school, it might be setting up some kind of buddy system with another school that's got another system such as yours, and you can do periodic kind of observations to make sure that you can support them with their occupational competence moving forward. So that's the further requirements that the Quality and Career Standards stipulate. Again, looking at the Quality and Career Standards requirements around personal guidance. So we know it's level 6 or level 7 careers guidance practitioner. We know that they need to be registered on the CDI's professional register. This next part, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time over just to make sure we're clear on, because on the Compass score that we do, it will state there that 100%, and again, the statutory guidance says that every young person by the age of 16 should have a personal guidance appointment by level 6 practitioner, as we've been looking at. But when we come to the Compass score, the Careers and Enterprise Company and the Gatsby Foundation and the Quality and Careers Standard as well has realised that, you know, we shouldn't necessarily be forcing every young person to receive a personal guidance interview just because the statutory guidance says they should do it. And that's because we need to tick this box on Gatsby Benchmark 8 on the Compass. There's 100% of our learners have received this to be able to get it. So what they've done is they've worked together and they've said that, you know, if 75% of young people before the age of 16 have had a personal guidance interview, we can check that box on Compass to say that 100% of learners have met that particular requirement. So obviously, mathematically, that doesn't make the most amount of sense necessarily, but to be honest, really, it kind of does make sense in the broader picture, because some young people just either A, really don't want personal guidance, or B, really don't need personal guidance. And I think as well, when we come back to this notion about utilising the resources as effectively as possible, we're far better spending some time then on identifying the need, really, and putting the resources, the need for those learners that need the most support, kind of thing. If young people don't want or don't need guidance, they're probably going to get very little from the experience, really. Also, having those effective identification and referral systems in place with evidence of learners receiving careers guidance support based on the needs assessment kind of thing. So this is about saying, well, you know, if you're falling short of the criteria of 75%, but you are providing personal guidance from this criteria here, and it's effective, and you've got a good system in place for identification and referral, but it might be that only, say, 35, 40 or 50% of the year group are getting careers guidance, but those that need the most support are getting more and more interventions, then you still meet the requirements of the quality and career standard under the making good progress aspect. But arguably, you could say that that's probably a better system than the one above. We'll come back to that a bit later on. Okay, what I just want to look at for the next couple of minutes then is looking at some of this underpinning rationale really for guidance. And what I'm going to use here to just underline this then is some research really from the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. And what they've been looking at here then, so this is from a survey of over 500,000 15-year-olds across developed countries in the world. And based on those responses, only 15% of 15-year-olds didn't have reported that they didn't have a plan in place about what they wanted to do by the age of 15. Which is quite interesting, really, of course, because a lot of the resources we put into personal guidance historically has been about seeing everybody in year 11 kind of thing for one-to-one careers guidance. But what this data is saying is that, well, with the approach that we've got in place at the moment, it might be that about 85% of learners have already formed a plan by that stage. Come back to the quality of that in a couple of seconds there. Also means obviously 15% by 15 are still quite clueless really and need further support to be able to help make that transition. Obviously they become the main aspect of the resource that we've got to use to be able to support them with multiple interventions to make sure that they're supported to be able to help make a well-informed and realistic decision about what they want to do next and cope with their transition effectively. This also says, though, that although most of them have got a plan in place, they're not necessarily very imaginative when it comes to their expected work in life and things. So a third of those 15-year-olds, the 500,000 learners across the developed countries, are citing aspirations from one of just 10 jobs, which is really alarming in many ways to say just how unaware young people are about the world of work, really, and what the opportunities are, and still perhaps looking at traditional job areas rather than having a more up-to-date picture of the world. So this is quite interesting, and it tells us a few things, really. One thing it tells us about the guidance, and this is a bit of an age-old dilemma, really, when it comes to supporting young people with careers at the age of kind of like 15, 16. Anybody that have done a university qualification in careers guidance might have studied this in great length, really. And it's really about trying to look at the difference between something called the careers plan and career planning. And what I mean really by this then is that with the data that this suggests, and a lot of the data that we can capture from our own learners in school, might well be that it might support this to say that about 85% of learners have got a career plan in place then about where they want to go longer term and what they want to do after year 11 to pursue that to get to the next stage of learning. And what we can do as part of the guidance process is to kind of like appraise that career plan a bit, and to ask them more information, to find out if they've got any needs to be able to develop that plan. We can bring in guidance tools such as raising aspirations, challenging any particular stereotypes, or addressing any unrealistic expectations, those kind of things, and support them really with that, with getting to that plan. The other aspect, though, and this is where we get to the true meaning of what personal guidance and effective personal guidance is more about a process of appraising their career planning rather than their career plan. The career plan is what they're presenting. The career planning is more about, taking a good few stages back from what they're presenting as the career plan and helping them as like a coaching system, really, to be able to develop all the stages, approaches that they need to go through effectively to be able to arrive at that plan. And what they tend to find then is that there's normally some of the mechanics here along the way isn't quite as sound as it should be, really, to be able to help have a best informed plan about where they want to go forward. So therefore, obviously, more time for guidance and at the right time can really help to support learners to be able to fine-tune their career planning approach and appraisal of that. And that's really summarised here by the OECD as well. So research shows that independent careers advisors, through effective careers guidance, utilising a range of models, tools and techniques, can help students better understand their interests and preferences. And guidance then becomes a learner experience where students learn the skills to enable them to make an informed decision. So it's very much more like a coaching or counselling type of there, where we're helping learners, we're equipping them with the knowledge and skills to be able to be effective in terms of appraising their own career planning process and learn the skill to career plan that they're going to need for the rest of their lives, really, because young people are going to be faced with a wide range of decisions and career changes throughout their working life. And also, obviously, if we spend the time appraising this career plan that 15%, that 85% of learners, as this research suggests, has, then that's only going to be quite effective for this one transition they're going to make next. It doesn't really necessarily help them to develop the career planning competencies that's going to help them later on in life for their subsequent transitions. So that's quite an important distinction, really. And obviously, the time of when we do the guidance, and also the amount of time we provide for guidance and the amount of opportunities that we allow young people to get for personal guidance will really influence the quality about how well we're able to do just that's stated on that slide there, to really appraise that career planning as such. So looking at models of personal guidance, there are four main ways really that we can adopt this in school and college to be able to support our learners effectively. And these are the ones that we tend to present here. So all of these can be supportive to be able to achieve that magic 75% figure, really, that we stated before, to be able to satisfy the criteria for Gatsby Benchmark 8. Blanket interviewing, this is a term really was around in the late 90s and early noughties, and it's kind of like it's mainly around suggesting that we're going to see everybody for personal guidance. And I started practicing in the very early noughties kind of thing, and it was inherited a system from the 90s where careers services just before connections were paid by the career action plan much. So you'd see multiple learners as you see as many learners as possible, and that's what the service was. So when I started practicing, you'd go into a school in the morning and you'd have seen between 10 and 12 learners by lunchtime kind of thing. And then you'd go back to the career centre, frazzled pretty much by that, to write up your career action plans thing. And obviously, therefore, the quality is going to be was compromised completely, because you couldn't really tell one learner apart from the other, because you'd seen that many learners in a day or in a morning, and everybody was seen really for about 20-25 minutes for appointments. So it wasn't necessarily an effective service, albeit young people did get a service from a qualified careers guidance professional. And obviously, with this requirement now for personal guidance and having 75% of learners to be able to satisfy the criteria for personal guidance 8, with a limited amount of resources kind of thing, no extra funds to buy in personal guidance, even with a member of your own staff that's trained to do personal guidance, that has a huge cost attached to it, really, in terms of staff development and wages and on cost as such. So it's an expensive resource, and it means obviously that sometimes the compromises made now, we're starting to see some schools return to that blanket interviewing approach to get across everybody, that box to say that we're doing everything, we're seeing everyone. The triage approach, I mean, the triage approach here is similar to the NHS, really. If you think about your nurse practitioner and your GP, they will, you know, to be able to diagnose the need effectively and make sure that we can support the basic need at a lower level and refer on for specialist support from the GP kind of thing. And this is something that works really effectively in many schools across the county, because we've been pioneers with this in Lincolnshire for many years, but I think there's going to be a growing demand for this as things move forward. And you know what we've done in Lincolnshire, we've got like level 3 careers information and advice courses to train people up to have the basic understanding of careers information and advice, to help with things like understanding the options and the you know, having a good source of information points to be able to help with basic information, and also then to make sure they're fully aware of the limitations of their own role, and they know when to be able to refer people on for specialist careers guidance when they need that. So this works really well, and it means obviously that those that need personal guidance, the personal guidance advisor, it doesn't reduce the amount of personal guidance days. It means that the personal guidance person can focus and specialize their resources on those learners that need the more support, really, and those that need less support would be seen by someone like a level 3 triage agent. And this is something we've got a number of cohorts live at the moment in Lincolnshire that Link Hire are supporting for this project too. So I'll come back to that as well in a moment. It's also possible to do your triage with a level 6 trained or guidance practitioner, which might be that you see everybody for 20 or 30 minutes to start with, and then you come back and you see those people for more time, really, for those that need it the most. But again, that's quite a significant resource there, kind of thing, and not necessarily the best use of that resource. The group guidance is quite interesting. So again, coming back to this slide here, which talks about that second paragraph, the government's expectation is that every pupil should have at least one such interview, personal guidance interview, by the age of 16, the opportunity for further one. Nowhere in this paragraph, nor the following paragraph, does it state anywhere that it has to be a one-to-one personal guidance session. So things like the Careers and Enterprise Company and the Quality and Careers Standard have put together some guidelines really on group guidance. And it becomes quite effective where you've done a successful diagnosis of needs, and you might have, say, for example, half a dozen labour market entrants that have got aspirations to go into an apprenticeship. And rather than do individual sessions then that talk about all the processes about how to go about and you know, fine tune on the mechanics then about how to apply and how to get things together, what the training providers look like, knocking on the doors of the employers, refining the CVs, etc. You know, having a group guidance session could be quite effective to be able to do that, and then maybe subsequent smaller sessions afterwards just to see what their individual needs are. So that's an example really about where that can be quite effective. Also technology, especially COVID-19, but even before COVID-19, technology with having these Zooms or these Teams where you've got professional guidance trained people on the other end can be an effective way to be able to support young people. So it's something that can be supported all the way through now with COVID-19 with learners that have got transition problems, but also obviously even moving forward. So, you know, post COVID-19, hopefully, we'll see that people are more familiar with using video technology now. Some learners are non-attenders, are school refusers, are dual school registered, where they might be accessing education from elsewhere and off-site. Maybe setting up sessions like this with professional guidance people to use the technology effectively could be a really useful resource there to be able to avoid things like home visits and things like that. So those are the main models of personal guidance. What we basically have here then as careers leaders is we have a responsibility to think really about what's going to be the most effective model or combination of models to be able to use the resources that we've got available to be able to meet the demand of one-to-one support as best as we possibly can. And what that then throws up a little bit more of a dilemma towards then is about what are our drivers here then? You know, is it meeting the statutory guidance, or is it best practice, or is it a little bit of a blend of both? Meeting the statutory guidance says there about obviously level 6, it's about on the CDI's professional register. We talk about 75% of learners getting, by the age of 16, getting a personal guidance interview to be able to be fully meeting the benchmarks. But when we look at the best practice part, then it's more about, obviously that would still be about level 6 guidance practitioners kind of thing too, and on the professional register, and making sure that a suitable proportion of learners are getting that level 6 service too. But fundamentally what it's saying is that even from kind of like year 9 onwards, we're starting to get a really good sound basis of an identification of needs. So diagnosing what their career development needs are, thinking about when they might want their careers guidance, but remembering that if say 85% of learners by the age of 15 have formed some kind of plan, whether or not it's a sound plan or not, it's another matter, but they've formed some kind of plan. You know, is it appropriate to bring some of these guidance services lower down in school, make them available to help when they're formulating this plan, to see if they need help in advice in doing that, so we can maybe more appraise the planning, help them to appraise that planning before this plan is formulated. But it's also about thinking, well, utilising resources effectively. So thinking about your colleagues really in school. It might be somebody that you identify to get like a level 3 basic qualification in careers information and advice, to make sure that that support can go further. So it means that yeah, okay, the personal guidance provider will still have the same amount of days, maybe even more, but will be refined on seeing those learners that need the most help and seeing them multiple times until they get there. But also saying that those young people that don't feel they necessarily, that feel that they don't necessarily need a lot of support and have got a plan in place, you know, maybe somebody with careers information and advice background rather than personal guidance can just have a chat with them to make sure, see if they need any extra help or support on anything. And then just start to kind of like assess their career plan in a way to say, well, you know, is this sound enough actually? Or, you know, do they actually feel that they might benefit from some careers guidance after all? Because, you know, there's some holes here that we've identified. So, and that's really about that best practice, about that identification of need, the diagnosis, the advice and guidance services provided to meet that need, making sure we're effectively tracking, coordinating, recording, two-way referrals between anybody, you know, your support staff and your personal guidance to make sure that learners are supported adequately. And obviously making sure that careers advice and guidance services are monitored, reviewed and evaluated to be able to make sure it's meeting the demands effectively, and therefore influencing how we develop the service. So just want to finish off really by thinking a bit more about this careers information and advice that supports the personal guidance role. And again, the underlying principle behind this then is that the demand for support is far greater than the supply is ever going to be, to be honest, because, you know, young people get very few opportunities these days for one-to-one support, not just from careers, but from a whole range of different aspects. Then trying to coordinate these one-to-one interventions and support the personal guidance process is going to be really effective to be able to join things up. And again, with that statutory guidance, then same paragraph again for a third time, paragraph 79, but this time I'm focusing more on the second bullet point, which says that schools should integrate this guidance, so personal guidance, level 6 training personal guidance, within the pastoral system so that personal guidance interviews can be followed up by the form tutors or their equivalents. And obviously what that's saying then is that there's a real need there for the personal guidance role not to just be parachuted in and out kind of thing, to deliver the personal guidance and then off they go again. It's about thinking about things like the action plan that's produced from it, and it's about making sure that's shared with the pastoral team, the form tutors and things, so that young people can then be supported to say how are they getting on towards that. And they can be supported to say, well, do they have any further guidance needs then that they're still left underlined, and therefore having an open system where they can re-refer back in to the guidance system for support. But I'd also extend that further to say it's not just about the follow-up, it's also about the pre-work too, to make sure that young people have got clear expectations about what's going to happen in the careers guidance system. And also that you know, triage support perhaps then, where it might be your pastoral tutors or mentors, or even if you've got like a level 3 careers information advisor, they've got the skills to be able to talk to learners, as they will do as part of their role as pastoral staff anyway, and just identify where we've got a need for personal guidance, where young people are struggling and would benefit from receiving personal guidance into. So those are the parts that we can do the most to be able to maximise that personal guidance. The other one that we haven't, it's probably a whole completely different webinar topic series then. It's about this notion about careers education before careers guidance. And what I mean before that then is that we as careers leaders, we've got a duty here to make sure that the careers education that young people receive is fundamentally sound, really, so that it better equips them with the knowledge of themselves and their skills and their attitudes and their beliefs and their values and their qualities, etc., and also a full range of kind of encounter opportunities to find out more about a whole range of different career pathways and progression routes and stuff. So that they've got all that knowledge, and then they can use that in the guidance sessions then to help use that to go through the process of career planning to reach a decision. The problem we often find in schools is that careers education has been patchy over the last few years at best. And what that means then is often careers guidance practitioners are spending all their time in guidance just trying to cram in like 5 years worth of careers education into like a 45-50 minute session kind of thing, rather than appraising their knowledge and skills, because they haven't had the opportunity to develop that really. So that's a real significant point. Guidance is only going to be anywhere near effective if the careers education is sound before that. And again, just a bit of a reminder then, so what we're talking about here then, careers guidance should be done by level 6 trained guidance staff, okay? And it's that deeper intervention. But other staff in schools and colleges have got a role to play here. This is about making sure careers, we've got, it might be through the website, it might be through a number of different services or resources, is that we've got good careers information and resources about courses, occupations, career paths, all those kinds of stuff. And then when it comes to careers advice, this isn't normal advice that you give down the pubs when you met with your friends, kind of offloading lots of traumatic experiences. Careers advice is similar to financial advice, and it's about providing the information and helping make sure you understand that information. It's not about sharing any thoughts about what we think is appropriate for them or not. It's about having that explanation information so that we know that they can understand it, use it to help with decision making. If they're still unsure, then they've got a guidance need. And again, coming towards a close here. So with careers information and advice, so this might be a role that you or a colleague that's involved in supporting learners one-to-one through the pastoral system, if they want to give good careers information and advice, remember, they don't necessarily have to be trained in this, but there are qualifications they can get that can support with this. So good careers information and advice remains independent and impartial at all times. It looks at those transition information, what the options are, helps them to understand that. It looks at things like information around subject links to careers, about notions of raising aspirations and challenging stereotypes and those kind of things, to make sure that they've not got they've not developed an unhealthy value around certain career paths based on out of date or inappropriate stereotypes that they've developed. We've got a role to challenge that. We've got a role to be able to refer on for specialist guidance then when they need help in interpreting careers information and advice. When that's not enough, we don't go any further, we signpost on for professional guidance. And we signpost on for careers information resources too. And on the flip side of that, the bad careers advice, even though it might be completely intended in the best possible way, we all do this in school. Everyone as educators wants to be in education because we want to help young people, and we're asked about careers. We don't want to say that we don't have the answers, so we can often think, well, actually, yeah, you'll be really good at this, or think, oh yeah, you'd be fantastic to take geography next year or something like that. We often always refer back to what we know, which is either our own experiences or our son or daughter's experience or our nephews or nieces. We often kind of think, well, okay, we don't want to set them up for a fail, so we're going to tell them if they can't do that. And this is that stigma that lasts a lifetime with careers. So anybody of my generation and older will remember a careers experience as somebody sitting them down in a room and saying that you can't do a whole host of things. Not at all helpful for the profession, kind of thing. So, if you find that somebody's got unrealistic expectations, refer them on for careers guidance support, and we can do that in a controlled manner, I think, looking at hypotheticals and backup plans, etc. Any notion that supports a careers for life is outdated, so we make sure we shouldn't be reinforcing that out-of-date message. And also the directive approach. In schools, especially as teachers, we tend to be more directive because we have to be. We're talking to a group of learners. But anything around information and advice should be a two-way process. It should be equal dynamics, really. So all these things here are considered bad practice, really, with careers information and advice, and steer more towards the good practice. Okay, so conscious there, I've been talking on for about 45 minutes. I did exactly what I thought I was going to do, and that's where I was going to get really involved in what I was talking about and not do so well in looking to see if there's any questions through the chat facility. Having said that, I've just had a look and I've noticed that there are no questions through the chat facility, so probably didn't need to make that admission there. But I just want to open up now to say, well, for any comments or questions, either through the chat facility. We haven't got a huge amount of people online today, kind of thing. So if you prefer to unmute your mic and ask away, you're more than welcome to do so. Great comment from Richard, saying no questions, but appreciated. So thank you. Pleased that you're able to get something from that. Yeah, so Linda, thank you for that, Linda. So just mentioning there then about perhaps looking around your 9 option choices and so on and so forth, then with personal guidance. Smashing, thank you, Linda. Any other questions at all? You know, do feel free to tap away or to unmute your mic, and or even if you're feeling brave, turn your camera screens on and talk to me. Elaine's asked a question there about the level 3 course. Not so about how many spaces are still available on that level 3 course. Not entirely sure, Elaine, is the honest answer. If you email me, if you've got any candidates that might be interested or might be appropriate to gain that basic level understanding of the level 3, what we can do is we can put that forward, because obviously, you know, we deliver the courses and we can always provide those. At the moment, Link Hire have really been generous in providing some funds for some of those for a couple of cohorts. So I can put that question forward to see if there's any scope for a 3rd cohort. So you might well be able to join that. But if you email me in the first instance, then I can ask the question on your behalf. Great, smashing. Any other questions at all? The final thing I'll say on this aspect, and it's around the statutory guidance and personal guidance 8, and this is purely a personal opinion rather than necessarily having anything concrete to back it up on, but what we're expecting anyway at the moment from DfE at some points, you know, it won't necessarily be immediately with all the COVID-19 aspects then and other priorities in government. But the statutory guidance is time bound. We know that it refers to by the end of 2020 all the way through it, and mainly about meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks. We know that really, ideally, it should be updated before December 2020. But also we know that, you know, at the moment there's this expectation that all schools should be meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks by the end of 2020. And obviously the data that we've got that supports that, the most recent data troll in November 2019 from the Compass report says that on average schools are meeting 3 of these 8 benchmarks fully, and those schools that have done the Compass tool more than once are meeting 3.2. Anybody with the quality and career standard is at 3.9, and anybody with the quality and career standard through career mark is 4.7. All that taken into consideration, it still means that we've still got a long way to go, to be honest, to meet all 8 Gatsby benchmarks 100%. And it's going to be really interesting as the end of 2020 approaches faster and faster to say, well, what changes are going to come into place really around this? Personal guidance is a really interesting one here, because this is the one, it's mainly really a resource issue that will us get into that magic 75% figure, really, because it costs to be able to invest in it, whether we buy it in or whether we train somebody up internally. There are costs there associated. And you wonder really then if that 100%, and this is my own reflection, and just wondering, well, you know, one of 3 things might happen with that statutory guidance then when it's updated. I don't think they'll want schools necessarily to present themselves ready for a fail then, and for all schools then to be deemed unsuccessful in January 21 if they're not meeting all 8 Gatsby benchmarks. So what I'd imagine is either maybe that deadline might be extended, it might be, you know, say to something like 2022 or whatever. It might be that, and this is something that the CDI, I know, are trying to provide a case for, which is almost like giving a premium to schools then for that kind of like ring fencing on career spending that can support things like personal guidance. So that would obviously help contribute to that, certainly. The third one is that they've already reduced that 100% down to 75%. They could reduce that further as well. And I don't think necessarily that would be a bad thing, in my personal opinion, because it's more about, rather than reducing the amount of guidance that's going on, to fine-tuning it into those that desperately need it, and having those appropriate triage systems to be able to support everybody, identify the needs, and to be able to meet those needs appropriately. So we'll see. We'll wait and see with that one. Just looking at a couple of questions that I've heard since I've been rabbiting on about my own kind of predictions really for personal guidance and statutory guidance. Sarah, look out for a new level 6 advisor. The current one's leaving. Grateful if anyone knows anyone who could work 1 or 2 days a week. Yeah, there's a number of ways to look at this with Sarah. So anything from, there are obviously options about buying in, kind of like external careers guidance. So, you know, if that's something that we can help with, do let me know, and we can explore that, Sarah. The other ones then is mainly about maybe going to post then and advertising, you know, employing your own guidance practitioner kind of thing, making sure you've got the systems in place to be able to do that effectively. And if that's something obviously that you do, there are a number of networks that we can support to be able to share that post far and wide through the careers community to make sure that it goes out as far as possible to level 6 providers. Pauline's mentioned there as well. So there's not just Complete Careers. Nexion is another service in Lincolnshire that's got careers guidance practitioners too. So you can look at our services, you can compare with things like Nexion, and you can also look at the lines of kind of like recruiting your own if you've got the systems in place to be able to do so. Yeah, Emma's mentioned about using also our services for one-to-one careers guidance. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments or queries at all? So I'm kind of like more than happy to stay on. All of those have been answered, but if you haven't got any further questions, then I can close this now and say that you're all on your own time from this moment onwards, really. So you know, but again, so thank you all for listening, and you know, stay on the call if you want to have a broader chat about anything in your particular needs. But do feel free to leave at any point from this point onwards, then to get on with your Friday, and have a lovely weekend, everyone. Thank you. Stop recording now.